Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very pleased and honored to welcome three distinguished colleagues and experts to talk about what is probably one of the key challenges for aviation, environment and environmental sustainability. Starting on my left, I've got Carrie Harris. Carrie is Group Sustainability Manager for the International Airlines Group. We've been working a lot together on CORSIA, so I'll very look forward to her views and thoughts on CORSIA and other topics. I also have the pleasure of welcoming Antonio de Palmas, who's Managing Director for Boeing Southern Europe, and Roberta Neri, who's the CEO for the Italian air navigation service provider, ENAV. So just starting maybe with the topic which is probably the highest on, at least on the political agenda now, climate change. Just to set the scene, I think it's worth reminding that the industry has set a number of goals. We've adopted, close to 10 years ago actually, a first goal which aims at improving our fuel efficiency by an annual average of 1.5%. We're now focusing a lot on our medium-term goal, which is to cap our CO2 emissions at the levels they will be at in 2020. And then we have a long-term ambition to cut our emissions by half compared to where they were in 2005. And very often when I introduce these targets, my reaction and one of my comments is always it's wonderful to have targets, but if you don't have a strategy to achieve these targets, they're pretty much meaningless. And to really sort of kick off that panel, I'll be keen to have the views of our colleagues on the different levers that can help us achieve these ambitious targets. And I'll start with probably what many of you may have seen in the press. A lot of the attention recently has been on CORSIA, which stands for Carbon Offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation. CORSIA is an agreement which was reached 2.5 years ago, no, 2 years ago in ICAO. And as you can see from the press cuttings, I think there was wide agreement that the agreement on CORSIA was historic, that it was a landmark, and I think everyone recognized really the value and importance of what is actually the first market-based measure that has been agreed at global level for a single sector. But that was a bit the honeymoon, and now as we're actually just about 6 weeks away from the implementation of the scheme, since the first requirements will apply on the 1st of January 2019, we're seeing a different tone. Not so much outside of Europe, but definitely in Europe, we're seeing some criticism and skepticism on CORSIA. So looking at that skepticism, I was keen to have Carrie's thoughts on the role of CORSIA in the industry's strategy and how it will contribute to these targets.
Yeah, thanks, Michel. I think the good news is that I think we're right now at a really pivotal point. So my passion is really about transforming aviation sustainability. And I've worked in this field for over 20 years across airports, ATC, and now in airlines. And obviously, we've seen an evolution in performance over that time in terms of sustainability. But right now, and certainly within the next couple of years, the really exciting opportunity is that we're actually about to move from just kind of mitigating our impacts to actually being able to start reducing them. And we've never been in that position before, so it puts us really at a place now that hopefully we'll have a really good story to tell about aviation's environmental performance. So to Michel's point about kind of CORSIA and why there may be some skepticism around whether this is really the right answer for aviation, I want to use this chart to illustrate just how aviation is tackling its CO2 emissions. And this is a UK chart, but I think the principles that it demonstrates applies on a global scale. And if you were looking at this in a global way, the demand growth line might be a bit steeper. But because the UK is a slightly mature market, then it's a little bit shallower. But nevertheless, the principles apply. And what this shows is the top line there, the black line of demand growth out to 2050, and then the segments within our sector where we're actually already working to improve fuel efficiency and reduce CO2 emissions. And the top green wedge there is air traffic management and operations, and we expect possibly about 10% improvement due to that. The blue wedge is the kind of technology improvements and the aircraft and the evolution of the kind of new generation aircraft like Boeing 787, like the 320neo, 350, those sorts of aircraft that are delivering 15 to 20% improvement in CO2 performance. The yellow wedge is then kind of future aircraft that are still on the drawing board, but that we know from experience are helping us deliver this 1.5% improvement per year. And then the pale blue wedge is the sustainable aviation fuels, which you heard about yesterday. And that wedge, depending on the policy incentives that are in place, that could deliver anything from 5% to 25% of fuel by 2050. So it's really down to governments to help the industry scale that up. And so finally, we come to the piece where CORSIA plays its part, and that is the grey hatched wedge at the bottom there. And the exciting thing here is that because it's difficult to decarbonise aviation, we've got the opportunity now with CORSIA to be able to actually make more impact sooner by using the CORSIA carbon offsetting and reduction scheme to cap aviation CO2 emissions from 2020, and then in due course potentially increase the ambition of that scheme so that we start working towards our 2050 goal of a 50% net reduction in CO2 emissions. So I think that why the skepticism? Some of the purists might think that the ideal scheme was something replicating the EU ETS on a global scale, and perhaps in time CORSIA could evolve to that. But I think you have to look at CORSIA as a very important first step. It helps establish the principle of carbon pricing for aviation. It helps get states and airlines used to factoring that into our operations and putting in place the framework. And then beyond that, we can move towards something that's potentially more robust and potentially bringing in other sectors that we can trade with. So I think back to the challenge, it's about environmental integrity.
No, exactly, and you just mentioned environmental integrity, but I think that's one of the big question marks that we get from NGOs and from some policymakers in Europe. And I'd like to have your thoughts on the extent to which ICAO can, I would say, give assurances that environmental integrity will be reached. How can we make sure that CORSIA delivers also on the environmental integrity front?
So it's really vital that we demonstrate that CORSIA has actual reductions in emissions. Carbon taxes, the challenge with those is they're a blunt instrument and the money from them just disappears. With carbon offsetting, we're making sure that we're actually reducing net CO2 emissions. And through ICAO and the work that we've been involved with, there's a really extensive program putting in place, monitoring, reporting and verification rules that we all have to comply with. Hopefully all the airlines in the room, you're already got your monitoring plan ready, because that starts from January 2019. And then all those rules are in place. And equally for the emissions unit programs that can comply with CORSIA, there's robust rules around the program eligibility and the actual offsets that are eligible. So we can be secure in the knowledge that there's very strong rules.
Excellent. Yeah. Maybe moving on to technology, one other criticism that we've had in relation to CORSIA, and I've heard it a number of times, is, well, now that CORSIA is in place, basically airlines are not going to put much effort anymore into improving their fuel efficiency. They can just, in a way, buy their way out of making any efforts to reduce their own CO2 emissions. Is that from the technology perspective, a concern for you that suddenly technological improvements would become secondary to offsetting?
Well, look, no, I don't think so. I remember when we started with a four-pillar strategy, we have certain technologies in place. Today we have more technologies, more options, better efficiency. In 5, 10 years' time, we will have new technologies, electric propulsions, maybe some forms of it. No, I mean, efficiency is a journey of this industry that is endless, basically. So it's not driven only by environmental concerns, although they're very important and very central. It's driven by cost. It's driven by competition. It's driven by so many factors that you cannot just push out of the equation. We are very committed, by the way, as an industry, as OEMs, to work on efficiency throughout the life cycle. So it's the manufacturing, the way we build the aircraft, is the way the aircraft operates, in-service operation. It's also end of life, it's recycling. We're also working hard on that. And I think technology has delivered because, so far we have, you remember, the commitment, and we see in the chart, the new models, well, the previous one, the new models, our models at least, the 737 MAX is 20%, more CO2 efficient compared to the aircraft you replace, which is a 737 NG. 787, same thing, 20 to 25%. Actually, the 787 is performing efficiency-wise better than it was actually expected. Same thing for the new 777X. And think about that. I mean, the 737 MAX, I mean, they're making impact. This is not just on paper. The 737 MAX, I mean, 220 in services, 4,700 orders, and we are producing 52 a month, ramping up to 57 a month in a couple of years. So they're populating the landscape. Same thing for the 787, the 777X, when it comes into service. And the same thing with Airbus. I mean, Airbus is doing the same thing. So these new efficient aircraft are populating the landscape. So they are making the difference day in, day out. And our commitment clearly is, when we bring a new model to the market, is at least 15% or if not 20% more efficient. And this has become also the ICAO CO2 standard, by the way, or will become in 2020. So there's no doubt that technology moves the needle for sustainability to me, because at the end, all the other measures have, the effect of, incentivize more technologies by making sure that we accelerate the pace of technologies development and innovation. And when look back the last 5 years, what happened with technology in New York Club, I think we are delivering on that promise. So this is the first piece. The second piece, Roberta certainly is more, expert and competent talking about, operational efficiency, ATM and things like that. But also there are, I mean, we've been talking about data analytics, digital aviation this morning, and those technologies are delivering, huge possibilities, huge potential for more efficiency. The other element, let me say just a few things about electrification, electric propulsion. Actually, we had to change our statement. I remember about a year and a half ago, our statement was very clear. We don't see, use of electrical propulsion in aircraft, commercial aircraft, in the foreseeable future. So we're not saying that anymore. We are saying, maybe, but the progress of batteries just in the last year and a half have been just incredible. So I think we see some kind of, small hybrid electric vehicle already possible, kind of, urban taxis in the 2020 time frame. And already in 2030, we see the possibility to see, small aircraft, regional aircraft, a bit smaller, but than the 737s or A320s, already, in fleet, kind of hybrid. For the, long haul, I think that's more challenging. It's about, energy storage, and the technology is not matured. And I think we don't see prospects for that. But again, with that, pace of innovation, I'm pretty sure that in 5 years' time, we will see the landscape, totally different. Last piece, sustainable biofuels, very, very important. I think we see the slides there, and particularly because electrification is becoming a reality, but, it will take time. We badly need aviation biofuels. We badly need SAF to deliver on that promise, especially to 2050. And we heard yesterday from Nesty, from Paul, how challenging this is going to be. But that's probably where actually the governments and our industry advocacy collectively can help the most, because actually that's possible. The technology is there. It's just a matter of scaling up the model. And scaling up the model is, we know how to do that. We just need to help from all the stakeholders. So again, I think the technology is delivering great story, but more to come. And I think by 2020, we can have a totally different, or much improved, landscape and prospect for the benefit and the impact that technology can make on sustainability.
Thanks, Antonio. Every time I look at that chart, I think what stands out is it's very ambitious. The targets are very ambitious, and I think a lot can be done indeed through technology. We've got a market-based measure as well, but I think all the different sort of elements that we can use in order to reduce emissions need to be used, which leads me to infrastructure and operations, which have a very important role to play as well. And Roberta would be very interested in having your thoughts on the potential and the role of infrastructure and ANSPs in achieving these targets.
Yes, it's explained very well from Carrie, but also from Antonio, sorry. The fact that each operator within the air traffic sector has to contribute to reduce emission and to make sustainable the environment. And I believe that an air navigation service provider has a strong role in this. We are an actor and we have to contribute. I think it's important to underline that we operate under regulatory framework, and our regulation that is based on the single European sky. So the European Commission set important rules to align all the requirements that see main important pillars. I can resume 4 important pillars that are representative by safety. In our sector, safety is no a target, but is a paramount. Capacity, that currently is the major challenge in considering that traffic is growing at a very fast level. Cost efficiency, and the last but not least, environment. If we analyze these pillars, sometimes it seems to be also in contraposition. And the true challenges for us is to harmonize all of these, to put in place actions with the target to obtain each of these targets. And I think that as an air navigation service provider, we are very sensitive on it. We started to plan a program to maintain a very high level of sustainability. And I can show some concrete example, because I think that is the best way to demonstrate how it's possible to contribute in a relevant way to reduce the emission in the environment and to maintain a very high level of the other pillars. So I would like to put on the table an ENAV experience that is related to one, I can say 2 important projects in this environment. The first of these is representative by the free route airspace. Free route airspace is a constraint that the regulator set at the European level, in the sense that each air navigation service provider has to put in place free route airspace within 2022. We decided within an efficiency plan to anticipate this target because we strongly believed that the importance of this way to manage the route is very high, so that we decided to deploy the project into step. The first step was in operation in December 2016, and starting from that data, in Italy, all the airplane can cross the Italian airspace in a freeway, so without respect routes. And it means that the airlines company can choose a direct way, entry from an entry point to an exit point. And it was above 11,000 meters in December 2016. And starting from last May, we increase the level of the services, reducing the level above 9,000 meters. It is a revolutionary way to manage traffic in Italy. It's a revolutionary way because we had to change a relevant way our systems. The flight data processor systems was updated in a relevant way, just to we can imagine what does it mean to project a route without having a fixed point. We had to work a relevant way of new procedures, operative procedures, to manage traffic from a sector to another one within an area control center, and also from between an area control center and another one. We had to introduce new tools in order to maintain a very high level of safety. That, as I mentioned before, is a paramount. And last but not least, we had to work on our employees with strong training, because it is necessary to change in so relevant way the management of air traffic. But the result are now tangible, very tangible. We show a chart in which you can see the difference of the same flight before and after free route, and is very evident the impact in terms of saving coming from the distance, coming from the kilogram of emission in terms of CO2, the saving related to the fuel consumption, and all these combined with impact in terms of increase of capacity, because we can also show the effect coming from the possibility to manage a higher numbers of flights within the same areas of space. This project is part of our flight efficiency plan. That is a bigger one, because we started many years ago to plan some actions regarding the project with a strong effect in terms of reduction of emission. I can mention some other activities within this flight efficiency plan. The cooperation with other states around Italy is an important, not only the Blue Med, but also beyond Blue Med. The performance-based navigation, that is another area in which we can put in place actions in order to maximize the capacity and reduce impact on the environment. Airport operations, and last but not least, because it's very important, the culture of the employees in a company such as an air navigation service provider, the operational staff awareness. We mentioned some figures, and I think it's important to consider that we are able to measure the effect of this project, and starting from the current year until September, that is the data viable now. We are able to report about 9 million kilometers of saving in all the Italian space. It means about more than 13 kilogram of fuel of save. It means more than 100 kilogram of emission save. Just to give you also figures regarding money, we are speaking of more than 20 million euro, considering more or less 752,000 square kilometers of airspace in Italy. So I think that this project represents the concrete evidence of the possibility to contribute to the reduction of the emission, maintaining a very high level of safety, capacity, and cost efficiency. That is another strong constraint that we have from our regulator.
Thank you. We've covered climate change, but especially looking at the situation in Europe, there's another topic which I thought was very important to touch upon, which is noise. Noise is very clearly a key concern for local communities which live close to airports. And I think we've seen at different locations in Europe that it's probably one of the biggest obstacle to airport expansion and growth in Europe. Generally, I think the focus when it comes to noise, and ICAO has started working on noise standards, I think already back in the 60s, if I'm not mistaken. But the focus has been very much on technology again. And again, the same question: what is the potential for further improvements when it comes to noise? How much can we expect in terms of further noise reduction and again, contribution of technology in this field?
Yeah, so using the same chart, which is efficiency, by the way, even it's not in paper. You see the small, the noise footprints, big improvements. I think if we compare with aircraft that were flown in the 60s, we're talking about 90%, 90, more efficient, more noise efficient, so quieter aircraft, which is a lot, but it's not enough, clearly. But these technologies we have been talking, new engines, materials, operational efficiency, of course, have still, a lot of potential to reduce noise at source on the aircraft. At the same time, I think we have to recognize that, because of that efficiency, especially operational efficiency, there will be new paths. So new communities will be touched by the noise, aircraft noise issue, and more people, more citizens will be exposed to the problem. So it's a complex problem. I think there's no secret we need a balanced approach. So we need, the technology piece, we need the regulators, we need all stakeholders, communities at the table, because there are pros and cons, that we need to gauge, we need to measure, collectively and try to find the right solution. So technology will continue to deliver, and electrification is clearly, a big step there, because the moment we start having or we start flying aircraft with an electric propulsion, no matter the size, we can start with small aircraft, certainly the noise issue will be impacted. But what about on the ground? What about the airports, the system for, power system in the airports? That's to be completely, changed. So that's why all voices are needed, and I think we need really a collective approach in a constructive way. I don't think there is also from a technology standpoint, I don't think we can talk about a silver bullet for noise as we move forward. It's really, incremental gains coming from all the stakeholders and from, collective decision in the benefits of the environment, the industry, and the communities at large.
Thanks. So technology is there. There's been a lot of investment in improving the technology. Airlines have been investing a lot of money as well in renewing their fleet. The noise, I would say, output of aircraft has reduced quite significantly. And yet, complaints related to noise continue increasing. The perceived, I would say, annoyance continues to increase. What have we been doing wrong? What do we need to do in the future, Carrie?
You've got to the nub of the issue, and it's difficult. We've been doing some research, again in the UK and actually here at Madrid as well, and I think it seems counterintuitive, but I think we actually need to not stop focusing on reducing absolute noise reductions, but in addition to that, start also looking at other more innovative solutions. And they probably need to be bespoke for each airport, working with their local community, trying to understand what's going to look good for that community. And given that we've done as much as we have done already to reduce absolute noise levels, but the frequency of noise events has gone up, and the sensitivity of communities to noise, and particularly to changes, as you mentioned. So we're seeing that now it's not just a limit to future growth, but it's also a limit to even improving operations now. And we've seen, even where we've tried to deliver trials to reduce noise, the community sensitivity is so great that we can't even progress with those. So I think we need to think differently altogether about this subject, and maybe look at some innovative ways of community compensation and engagement in ways that we haven't in the past.
Thanks, Carrie. So again, noise is to be seen as an airport's problem, an airline's problem, a manufacturer's problem, and ANSPs are sometimes seen as being a bit further away from this problem, but I think they have a key role, and I'd be very keen to have your thoughts, Roberta, both on the role of ANSPs in addressing noise impacts, but also on the challenges that noise measures can have in terms of capacity and managing traffic flows.
No, obviously, as you say very well, we have a secondary role, considering that we have to support the aircraft during the phases of approach, takeoff, or landing from the airport. So we have, there are many other actors, starting from the Civil Aviation Authority, or the airport company, or the local institutions that has strong rules in maintaining a nice level of impact in the environment. We are planning to develop some important project in the satellite environment, because we strongly believe that also in the areas of the airport, the satellite system to support the navigation of the plane can improve all the requirements that I mentioned before, include the environment impact. So through GBus or CBus, or GBus for the critical airport, the airport with a high level of traffic, is possible to maximize the capacity, so reducing the impact in terms of noise. We are very focused on it, and we are already using CBus in some airport and GBus with the target to improve the level of the services that we can assure to the airlines company using airport in Italy. I think that speaking about satellite, we can also mention other important and innovative projects that also at world level that further contributes to the sustainability of the environment in general. I can mention one of the projects in which we are participating, that is Aviation. It's not related to the airport management, but sure is related to the improvement of the surveillance level at a worldwide level, considering that currently only 30% of airspace is covered by traditional instrument, by radars, because it's not possible to to check a plane over an ocean or over a desert. And through a satellite surveillance system like Aviation, will be possible to cover 100% of airspace. It means not only optimize the capacity of airspace, but also to reduce emission at worldwide level, because the possibility to optimize the routes, reducing, for example, the distance between a plane and another one, will have a strong impact in terms of emission. We are not measuring in terms of operations, because Aviation is not still in operation, but within the end of the year, the beginning of the next year, the system will be in place, will be in, all the entire constellation will be in orbit. It means that in the second half of the next year, the system will be in place, and we will start to measure the impact coming from this new system, as we are doing now for example, for free route or other current project.
Thank you very much. We're almost out of time. I've got 3 minutes left, and I'll be very cruel with my panelists. We've seen there's a lot of potential. There are tools out there to help us achieve our targets, both in noise and climate change. Now, my question, and if you can answer that question in 30 seconds each maximum, is what do we need to make it happen in the future? What do you need to turn this into concrete reality? Carrie, I'll start with you.
So I think there's commitment from all leaders in aviation, and kind of keep on lobbying governments, because we need that policy support as well.
Antonio.
Well, I think airplane technology will take care of themselves. I mean, I don't think we need too much help from regulators, but as far as SAF are concerned, I think we need a lot of help. We need to change the incentive paradigm and make sure that the regulators understand that this sector needs liquid fuels to fulfill, the promise, and to make, the industry and the air transport more sustainable. And the call came yesterday from Nesta. I think as an industry, we have to put pressure on the government to make sure that happens. The RED II is a good step, but it's not enough, and there is more to come. The scale is a function of, incentives in the fuel industry. So we need that. On the operational efficiency, I'm thinking, usual suspects, single European sky, next gen in the US. It's time to deliver. It's time to deliver, and it's time to deliver. We cannot wait anymore with these things, because the technologies are there. It's just politics and procedures. We need to move forward with that. So I think that would be my 2 thoughts about what we can do more.
Thank you, Roberta.
I can answer with 3 words: innovation, technology, and training of our controllers. I think that it is the solution, and we have to plan now to have within 15 years, when traffic will be doubled, then now we can give the right answer to the issues.
Thank you very much. So I would like to invite you all to join me in thanking Carrie, Antonio, and Roberta for their thoughts and perspective on indeed what is probably one of the key challenges that we'll have to overcome in order to first just simply deal with our environmental impact, but also to avoid negative impacts on capacity and the potential for future sustainable aviation in Europe. So thanks a lot for your contribution.
Thank you.